Hello, it's Shar here, and in today's video I'm going to be showing you how I modified the Swish and Pop interactive die to create a card that swings from the top. I'm going to be using images from Critters in the Jungle, and I've just placed those stamps onto the door of my MISTI tool. I'm inking them up with some jet black ink, and I'm going to stamp them on some Nina Solar White cardstock so that I can do some Copic coloring. I'm using this cute little monkey, that bunch of bananas, the vine for him to swing on, and then lots of the leaves that are in this set. I'm going to be doing some pretty simple coloring on my leaves. I have two colors of green. I'm going to go in with my darkest first and sort of outline the leaf as well as that vein that goes down the center. And then I'm going to blend that out with the lighter color. So I'm giving it sort of a lighter glow in the middle with a darker shadowing along the outside. Now I'm going back in with my darker color and just pulling that a little bit, and I'll blend it out one more time with the lighter. I'm going to be using the same coloring method for the small leaves as well. I'm coloring them all this way so that I can twist and turn them on my card in different directions and not have to concern myself with if a shadow is on the bottom of the leaf or the top of the leaf. I'm also coloring the vines here. I'm just doing a dark little bit on the bottom and then a light on the top. And then for the bananas, I'm just going to use a couple different shades of yellow. Going in with a darker one first, I'm going to pull in a lighter one, but I felt like there wasn't too much of a shadow between these two, so I'm actually going to get an even darker yellow and just outline the bottom of each of them. For my monkey, I'm using a pale brown for his face. I'm doing a little bit darker at the top and I'll blend it out. Using a little bit darker one for his ears, and then I'll use some darker browns for his body. I'm going in with my darker color first and kind of laying where the shadows are going to go. Then I'll go in with my mid-tone and sort of blend that out a little bit. And then finally I'll go in with my lightest and fill in the rest of his body. And then I can go back with that darker one and just enhance some of those shadows a little bit if I need to, if I feel like they kind of disappeared when I did my blending. And then I'm going to do the same sort of method on the top, starting with darker at the bottom, going in with my mid-tone and pulling that up, and then lighter at the top. I'm going to use the coordinating dies that go with this set to cut out all my pieces. So I'm just going to line those up, hold them in place with a little bit of washi tape. And then I'll run that through my die cut machine and have some perfectly cut pieces. I'm going to be using the Watercolor Wishes paper for my card. I'm using that dark teal color for the background and the darker green for my treetops. And you can see I've got my Swish and Pop pieces here. I've already cut that long pull tab out of some thick white cardstock. This is a 110-pound cardstock, so it's nice and strong. And then I cut that swishing arm out of some lawnfawn acetate. I used my stitch rectangle to cut my teal piece for the background. And here's where I'm going to modify this. So we've learned to put it at the bottom right corner. I'm going to flip it around and put it at the top left corner. So I'm still using that guide along the edge of my rectangle, and I'm using that top to line up so I know my minimum distance from the top it needs to be. So I've run that through my die cut machine and I've got my holes. So I'm going to start to assemble this in the same way that Kelly taught us in the intro video. I'm going to put my brad through the end of my pull tab. I like to hold my acetate straight up and down, and I know that the brad between these two pieces goes in the hole on the bottom. Then I can add the second brad to that top hole in the acetate. And I know that's the one that's going to go into my card base. Now I'm actually going to go ahead and insert this in my card base just as if these holes were along the bottom. So you can see this is what we're used to. It goes from the right and swishes to the left. I want my swishing mechanism to hang down from the top. So I'm just going to take it, rotate it on that brad that's in the card base. So the problem now is that the starting position when it's at the top, like you have it here, when the tab's pushed in, is on the left and it swings to the right. Which is fine if that's what you want, but for me, my monkey is facing to the left, so I want him to swing from the right side over to the left versus from the left side to the right. So I'm going to take that pull tab and rotate it on the brad to the right side. That way when it's pushed in its starting position, that tab that swings, that acetate piece, starts on the right and will swing to the left when the tab is pulled. So again, if it's in the regular position, it'll start on the left and swing to the right, but if you twist it to the other side, its starting position is on the right and will swing to the left. Now I can go ahead and add my images to this acetate arm. I'm using some really small glue dots to do this. I'm going to add my monkey down here towards the bottom. So this is quite a long arm that's going to swing. And then I've got my vines and I've turned them opposite directions and I'm just going to layer them together to make it look like one really long vine that this monkey's swinging on. I'm putting these little glue dots behind that leaf there to stick it to the acetate and also to the monkey's hand. And then I'm going to layer that second one, kind of overlap them like they look like they're a big long vine twisted together. And I know that this piece at the top, I'm going to end up covering up with what I put at the top. So it's going to look like it goes up into the treetops. And now you can see he swings from the right side to the left side. He's going the right direction instead of swinging backwards. So I can go ahead and cut off that acetate that's sticking out past the monkey because I like his position and where he's at. And now that he's in place, I want to control how far he swings. So if you push or pull that tab the full way, he's going to go off the side of the card. So I basically need to create a bumper to stop him in the position where I want him. So pushed in, this is as far to the right as I want him. So this is as far to the left as I want that tab to go. So I'm going to put a foam square there and you can see when that tab is pushed in, it's going to bump into that foam square and he's not going to go too far to the right off the side of my card. The same thing when he swings the other direction. This is as far as I want him to go. So I'm going to take a foam square there as well and put it in the notch of that acetate arm and it's going to give it a bumper so it can't go any further that direction. So you can see he's controlled within that rectangle now. I'm also going to add that bunch of bananas. I was going to let him hold the bananas, but I actually kind of like them at the top because it really fills this moving piece with a lot of stuff and it just has a really nice effect. Also, I felt like the bananas covered up that cute little monkey just a little bit too much. So I'm using a Puffy cloud border die and I've cut that green piece of Watercolor Wishes with that same stitch rectangle as the back, so it's got that stitching detail across the top. And then I'm going to use the Puffy cloud border die to cut my top piece. So I wanted this to look like the trees up above. So I don't want a straight border. I want it to have the look of the leaves up in the trees. And I use puffy clouds to create leaves a lot. So I've cut this piece. It's going to cover up my mechanism back there. And he's going to look like he is swinging from the treetops. So now I can take the piece that comes with this die set to cut a little notch in this green piece. So you line up that arm with the edge of your cardstock, and those two little arrows, I'm going to point at them with my pencil here, those line up with the top and bottom edge of the pull tab. So you want to have this pull tab in the start position so you know where to line this up. So I ran that through my die cut machine and now I have that little notch cut out with that nice stitching detail around the notch. And then I'm going to go ahead and stamp my sentiment on this. So I've got him in his starting position. I'm putting my sentiment to the left to fill in that space. And when he swings, he is going to swing in front of it. But I'm just going to stamp this in some black ink. And I'm doing all this before I start to assemble this onto a card so that it is nice and flat when I do my stamping. Now I'm going to add some strong adhesive runner here. And I've put it around all four sides and then one through the middle. You just want to make sure you avoid the brad. You don't want it to get caught on any adhesive because then it won't move. And then I'm lining it up on a white card base. So that's going to move nice and freely between that piece of paper and that card base. And then I'm going to take some foam squares and I'm lining some across the top, avoiding that pull tab arm. And then I'm also going to put a couple on the bottom of these bumps that go on the right side there. That's going to avoid my tab as well. And then I also need to put a couple on the left side underneath this tree. So I just decided, this is me trying to figure out where to put them so they don't accidentally peek out. So I'm just sort of holding it there, making sure that they all fall underneath that piece of paper. So before I glue that down, I'm going to trim off my tab. So you want to make sure you've got it pushed all the way in at that start position so you know where to trim off that tab. And then the little decorative piece that goes on the end that tells you to pull it, I've just cut from some cilantro cardstock. So I'm folding it on the score line that the die creates, and then I'm going to stick this onto the end of the tab with some liquid glue. And I usually just kind of hold this with my tweezers just for a couple seconds till that glue is nice and stuck and tacky. I'm pulling off the liner pieces from all my foam dots, and I'm going to adhere down this tree canopy. And he looks like he's swinging from the trees, which I just think is so adorable. So now to decorate that tree canopy a little bit, back to all those leaves that I colored before. I've placed them around where I want them, and I'm just going to glue those down, some of them with some liquid glue. These I'm tucking underneath, and then a couple I'm going to pop up with some thin foam squares on top of this piece of pattern paper. So like this one right here, I'm going to add a foam square so it's got a little bit of dimension between all these leaves. So once I got all my leaves glued down, I felt like it needed a little bit something else, a little pop of color. And so I stamped out the parrot that's also part of the Critters in the Jungle stamp set. And I'm just coloring him in some really bright parrot colors. So I'm coloring his body red. I'm going to color his feathers on his wing and his tail in blue, green, and yellow. And then a little bit of orange for his beak and his feet, and I'll use the coordinating die to cut him out. I'm adding a few of those thin foam squares, and I'm just going to pop him up in the trees up here, and I just think that balances things so much better. For the bottom, which was kind of looking bare, I decided to cut a piece of the lighter green Watercolor Wishes paper, use another one of the Puffy Cloud border dies. This is the medium sized. And just cut a piece for the bottom so he's going to look like he's swinging between the treetops. You know, there's some treetops below and some treetops above. And I think that just finished things off nicely. And I just love this little monkey on the vine swinging across this card. I just think it is so adorable. So I hope this card has inspired you to maybe try your Swish and Pop in a different way from the top of the card, or maybe a different direction. And I look forward to seeing what kind of things you create. Have an amazing day. Bye.